Think about a time in your life when you have been completely, unreservedly, completely, totally committed to whatever it was you were doing. You were doing what you were doing so much that you couldn't do anything else, that you couldn't even really think about what you were doing and while you were doing it. You were just so enthralled and so involved and so completely bound to what you're doing that you're not doing anything else. I can think of one time for certain, not just one time, but multiple times in your life, but one particular class of events for certain in your life that you were that committed, and that's when you're having an orgasm. When you're having an orgasm, you're not doing anything else. But I wonder if there's any other time like that in your life. And I can suggest other things that certainly could apply. I mean, the events leading up to the orgasm, presumably, you were fully committed to, or at least some of the time. Maybe other times you're thinking about work or doing your grocery list in your head while you're leading up to the orgasm. But nevertheless, when you get there, you're not doing anything else. But, playing with your dog or with a kid, that you can get so involved in just playing, or just playing a game, playing a sport. You can get so involved in that you become completely committed to it. It becomes everything that you're doing. And another example I could name is doing a big job, something that really requires an enormous amount of effort and time. And you start off, I mean, maybe it's something like, you know, cleaning a garage or something like that, an ugly, burdensome, toilsome, dirty job. You really don't want to do it. Not very exciting, it's not very interesting. It's not something that is going to be something big and showy that you're going to want to brag about when you're done. It's really just scut work, and yeah, who wants to do scut work? I never do. But it's a big job, and you get started on it, and maybe you start off a little resentful and slow and just kind of dragging your feet, but you're working along, and you discover as you're working that you've found a new way of cleaning that makes it just a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient, a little more fun. A little more fun. And you work along that way for a while, and you get better at your new technique, and you're kind of proud of yourself, and maybe you're really not thinking about this stuff explicitly, but you take a moment to look at yourself, and you find out that you're whistling. You work a little longer, and suddenly you realize that you're singing while you're doing this ugly work. And you keep finding new and better ways to get the job done faster, and more efficient ways of taking care of even the most obvious and toilsome of jobs. You find new and better ways of making them more efficient and more fun. You're literally dancing while you work. I mean, you've got some song in your head, and you know 1,000 songs note for note. If you just listen to them in your head, you can hear them. You can hear them just like the radio, or maybe you've got the radio playing. But you're doing this scut work, but you're having so much fun with it, and you're so involved with it that you're literally dancing while you're working, that your movements are expressing a form of dance. And you're totally committed. And you're not even aware of it. It's not like you decided that I'm going to be totally committed to this. I'm going to do this work so well that it makes me feel like dancing. But as you go along, you just work that way, that either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And if you're going to do it, it doesn't pay you at all to behave as if you're not going to do it, or to act like you rather didn't do it, or to, do it half-assed, and so you do the opposite. You end up committing yourself to it just by your actions. I call this the commitment of action. And it's vitally important for understanding what people do, that people do what they commit themselves to do. And when you commit yourself fully to doing something, you end up dancing. Even the most so-called meaningless of chores, even the most burdensome of scut work, you still end up dancing if you commit yourself. And this is the threshold of the idea that I call splendor. Splendor is a mental state of being, of that state of happiness, that state of dancing. It's mentally dancing through life. I can give you a definition. This is a definition that I wrote 30 years ago. And it's short. I could write much longer definitions, but this one at least is short. Splendor is the interior experience of being so enthralled by the act of creating the values that contribute to and ultimately comprise your idealized perfect self, that while you are experiencing it, you are your idealized perfect self. You have this image of yourself in your mind that you've carried around since you were 4 or 5 years old, since you abstracted the self in your brain. When you were a kid, you were like an animal. When you were an infant, a baby, a toddler, you were much like an animal, much more like an animal than you were like a human being, but you were in the progress of becoming a human being. In that process, you were discovering yourself. You were discovering this unique idea of your life. Every individual human being has one, and every individual human being had to abstract this idea. You had to learn this idea iteratively through time while you were a toddler. But when you finally do abstract that I, when you individuate yourself, when you separate yourself from all the other organisms, all the other people living around you, when you separate yourself and say, no, I am different, I am me, I am mine, my life is mine, my life is my own, when you start to have a secret life, that's one way of telling when this has happened, is when you have a life of your own that you keep secret from everybody else. But in any case, at that age, 4 or 5 years old, when you abstract the self, you also abstract an idealized image of yourself. You have an image of in your mind of your idealized perfect self, the way that you will be when you are finished. And when you live that idea in real life, when you live it outside your mind, when it's not just a part of your imagination, but when it's something that's a part of your actions, that you do it and you can see yourself doing it, you can live it from the inside out. When you live that idealized perfect self from the inside out, when you actually enact it, when it's a part of your real experience, that's splendor. That's what it is. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the moments that you spend living in splendor are the only moments that you're really alive as a human being, that you're alive as an organism from conception. And you're alive as an organism until you expire. But the only time that you're really alive fully, most fully alive as a human being, is when you're living in a state of splendor. And you're living in a state of splendor when you're totally committed, totally, completely committed to what it is that you're doing. And you're totally and completely committed to what it is that you're doing when you are manifesting, making manifest, making real your idealized perfect self. That's the process. This is a natural process. This is not supernatural. This is not magical. This is not accidental. This is not random. It's caused, and it's caused by you. Everything that matters in your life is caused by you. Everything that matters in your life originates from the inside outward. And when you manifest splendor in your actions, in your real life, you're doing it because you chose to. When you don't, you chose that too. Welcome to the Church of Splendor. My name name is Greg Swann. I am your televangelist. We are televising today over Google Live Hangouts, but someday soon we may be on your local broadcast channel, infecting the minds of your neighbors. I would love to do that. I'd love for you to help. But our topic today is the splendor of church, which I think is funny. I'm an atheist. I'm an egoist. I've spent much of my life making fun of televangelists because I think they are funny people. Watched them on television for years, but especially, they're not so much on TV anymore, but when I was a younger man, they were on all the time. They were on every day somewhere. I don't need to be sold on the negatives of churches. I can list them all day. There are people who have made a career out of being anti-church, and there's a limit to how far I can go with that. But if you're looking for negatives for church, I mean, I would start with dogma. If you're an atheist or an agnostic or some sort of non-theist, if you're unchurched in one way or another, the dogma problem is not a problem for you at all. If you are churched in some way or another, all you have to do is think about the other guy's dogma, and you understand what's wrong. You understand what's wrong with every other church, even if you don't understand what's wrong with yours. But the dogma is, fundamentally intellectually useless, and it may be useful to you in terms of some kind of interior consolation or whatever, but if you can't demonstrate it to me, then it's intellectually useless. I simply don't care. It's not part of my intellectual life. If it is of yours, that's your business, and three cheers for you. But it's not something that we can share because you can't demonstrate it. You can't put it out here between us so that we can both get a look at it, and therefore I consider it intellectually moot. The greed of televangelical ministries in particular, but the greed of church going back forever, that church has always been a means by which Eric Cartman lives at your expense, and I'm always looking for Eric Cartman. Wherever I see any group of people, I'm looking for Eric Cartman. I'll tell you that while you're looking at me, you should be looking for Eric Cartman. I don't think I fit the profile. If you're not suspicious, then you're not guarding your own interests, and I don't consider that respectable in any way at all. If I were in your position, you were making a sermon, I would definitely hold you to account. I encourage you to do the same with me. The third thing that people cite as a negative for church is simply the exclusion. That church is very appealing to people who are very social animals who like to stay connected with lots of other people, and it's appealing to people who like to show off. The ugly hat syndrome, the ugly dress syndrome. The suit that doesn't quite fit anymore. These are all things that you'll see on Sunday morning at church. And, church is appealing in the DISC system, of personality profiling. DISC is driver, image, social, computational. That's an easy way to keep track of it. Church is very appealing to people who are either high S, meaning very social, or high I, meaning very interested in presenting a public image of some sort or another. Church is much, much, much less interesting to high C's, people who are computational, analytical, people who like to build spreadsheets. They can't listen to the dogma of the church without disassembling it and trying to reassemble it in some kind of comprehensible way, and of course it doesn't make any sense. It parses to word salad, so they hate it. And church is very unappealing to people like me. I'm a high D, I'm a driver, very much a driver, do it, done. These are my favorite words. And church is unappealing to people like me because sitting still for an hour, I'm demanding that kind of stuff from you, but I'm not good at it the other way. I don't care to sit that long. But I don't have too much concern with these negatives of the church because, number one, dogma, I'm not interested. I'm definitely interested in sharing ideas, but your intellectual upkeep is your own problem. In the same respect, I don't ever intend to indoctrinate children. I think it's obscene to indoctrinate children. I think that's evil. It's the most common thing in the world for religious people to take their kids off to church and surrender them to Sunday school, to some Barney Fife. This is where you find the high C's in church, is in Sunday school. High C's combined with high I, kind of a really ugly combination, but these are the people who want to police your children's mind, and I don't think there's any business, well, I don't think anybody has any business policing your child's mind. If you want to talk to your children, your own children, about moral ideas, I think that's very appropriate. I do think that's appropriate, but you will do this, you won't do that, and threatening children with eternal torment or all of the other things that religions do to try to capture children's minds before they ever learn how to use them. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. It's literally indoctrination. It is not honest persuasion, because you cannot honestly persuade a 7-year-old of anything other than, you know, mere facts. 2 + 2 = 4. But what you can do is you can so intellectually terrorize a 7-year-old that he never will learn how to use his mind. He never will learn how to question your doctrinal authority. And I think that's obscene. It's not something I'll ever do. So I think I'm pretty safe on the subject of dogma. Nobody really cares to hear about what I have to say anyway. So if I managed to penetrate any mind, it's because I worked all week sharpening one dart and managed to get it in. I'm not interested in exclusion in any form whatever. I mean, any form whatever. You believe what you want to believe. You do what you want to do. You dress how you want to dress. You be who you are. Be who you are. Do what you want. Have what you love. I don't live any other way, and I don't expect anybody else to live any other way, and I will be damned if I'm going to tell somebody what they have to say. I'm not that way. I will tell you what I think, and I will tell you why what I think is good stuff to think, and why you might consider adopting my ideas. But beyond that, you're on your own. I'm not going to do that ever, nor will I be a part of it. And the third part is greed, and if I were greedy, I would not be living in this poverty. I am a starving artist, and everybody romances the starving artist, but try being one. I'm not interested in money. I know I'm not interested in money. I can tell because all the money I don't have. What I'm interested in are ideas, and I can tell that I'm interested in ideas because of all the great ideas I have. I am rich, rich, rich in ideas that no one else prizes, no one else values, not now, but they will. They will. So I am certainly shielded from greed right now, and in the long run I might have to police myself to prevent that from happening, but I don't really see it as being an issue because all I'm really interested in is working. I'm a driver. I don't care about anything except done, 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 done. Get it done. I want to be a driver. I'm definitely interested in building a televangelical mission in the sense of having an organization that's big enough to put services, religious church services, not religious services, but church services, the Church of Splendor, but the Church of Splendor on television. But that's money for doing things, not money for money's sake. Be like Reverend Ike driving around in a Cadillac, or like some modern day televangelist flying around in a Gulfstream private jet. I'm totally not interested in it. It's not appealing to me at all. So I feel like I'm safe from all of these characteristic negatives of churches. Certainly I don't have anything to do with faith, with the supernatural, with claims about an afterlife, with claims of interior experiences that no one else can experience. I am very much involved in interior experiences and experiences, introspective experiences inside the mind, but only the ones that all of us share. If you have a introspective experience that you say is unique, that no one else has it, you could go to some psychologist and he might say that you're having a delusion. What I would say is you're just being who you are, and feel free to do it, but it's not for me. Not something we can discuss, not something we can share, not something I can verify. Don't care. And that would be the criticism that non-religious people would make against the Church of Splendor, against the idea of an atheist, egoist church, is that without faith, without religion, without theology, without the idea of a God, without the supernatural, without the idea of an afterlife, what's the point of the church? We'll come back to that. Because first I want to point out to you that there are no non-gods. If you're human, you have a pantheon. You have a pantheon of gods. You may not think they're supernatural gods. You may not think that they created the universe. You may not think that they populate a heaven and a hell or all of the other things that typically religious, the people that we consider typically religious people say about their gods. You may not say those things about your gods, but the Cincinnati Bengals, my goodness, where are they in your pantheon? George Bush or Barack Obama, Ted Cruz, Hillary Clinton, where are they in your pantheon? The idea of justice, of equity, fairness, generosity, liberality, where are these ideas in your pantheon? The idea of democracy, or simply liberty. Where does that come in your pantheon? The idea of family, where is that in your pantheon? Each of us. Not only are we all religious, we're all polytheists. This may get my house bombed by an angry Christian, an angry Muslim, an angry Jew. The pretend monotheistic religions, but all people are polytheistic in the sense that they all have multiple gods, many gods, maybe dozens of gods, but certainly a half a dozen that are very, very serious, that are the source and sink of fairly continuous worship. I mean, maybe not continuous year-round, but during the basketball season, they're shooting free throws and you're holding your breath. What for? The fourth quarter of the basketball game, and you and everybody in the stands is cheering. You're watching a game on TV and you're cheering. What for? You are attempting to have affect in the real world of things by means which cannot possibly be effective, cannot possibly work. You are attempting to change things by supplication, by prayer. And you do it all the time, and everybody does it all the time. It's the most common thing in the world. I mean, not the most common thing in your life, but it's a daily occurrence. I mean, several times a day, maybe many times a day. Let me make this light. Let me make this light. What God? And what would he do anyway? And why would any God that ever existed intervene to the extent of not changing the traffic light? But that's not what you mean. You're just expressing a hope, a wish, a desire. And you're expressing it in the form of a supplication, and the supplication is meaningless, and you know it is, but nevertheless you do it all the time. We all do this all the time. There is one God in your pantheon that is probably the most neglected. All of these gods get a certain amount of attention. They all get a certain amount of attention. And the one that you say gets the most attention may not actually get the most attention. You really need to watch what you do, both in terms of your actual actions and also watch what you think. The stuff that you think about most is the stuff that you care about most. That's what caring is thinking. Not, caring is acting upon your thoughts, but the things that you think about all the time are the ones that you ideally should be acting on the most, but definitely they're the ones you care about the most, because you wouldn't be thinking about them if you didn't care. And the God that you say is the most important God in your life may not actually be the most important God in your life. And the only way you have of distinguishing one from the other, certainly no one else can tell you, but you have a way of measuring it. The way you measure is by where your thoughts go. You say that Allah is the one true God, but you spend all your time thinking about playing poker. Your God is poker. But there's one God in your pantheon that is probably the most neglected, and it's the one that I want you to pull out and polish up. That God is yourself. That idea that we were talking about, the idea that you abstracted when you were 4 or 5 years old, I say is the most important God in your pantheon. Absolutely the most important God in your pantheon. This is the one that should have the central position. This is the one that should get the most attention. It should be burnished to a glow at all times. And I'm fairly certain that it's not in your life. But it should be. Because everything that matters in your life starts here. Everything that you really care about is what you think about. Everything that matters in your life starts here. And therefore, the most important idea in your life is yourself. It is the most important God in your pantheon, even if you don't treat it that way. And the Church of Splendor exists to promote that God, to advance the interests of that God, to get you to think about that God, to get you to work on that God, to polish and burnish and improve upon, to build upon that God. All human beings worship. This is one of the things that distinguishes us from all other organisms. I'm very interested in the things that result from the thinking brain, the big brain up here, the human brain. And worship is one of those things that human beings have worshipped from the time that we became human beings. And we worship to this very day, and even people who insist that they are atheist or agnostic, reductionist scientists who insist that they live in a value-neutral universe, that the universe is indifferent, which means that as an entity within that universe, I must therefore also be indifferent. That's false. No one is indifferent. No living human being is indifferent. No living organism is indifferent, but no living human being is indifferent to the facts of reality and how that individual fits into those facts and what that individual can do to change his circumstances. No one is indifferent to that. Everyone is pursuing his own good all the time, and the real question is, are you pursuing your good consciously, or are you doing it unconsciously? Are you trying to do it unconsciously? If you worship yourself, the idea of your life that you abstracted when you were 4 or 5 years old and you've been working on iteratively ever since, if you worship the idea of yourself as a God, if you say that from now on I will always choose admirably, I will always choose in such a way that I leave myself feeling greater admiration for myself right now, but also going forward in my memories. If you always choose admirably, and if you resolve to yourself always to make the admirable choice, and to always work at everything that you do and every thought that you hold in such a way that you will always feel greater admiration for yourself, you will experience self-love. Self-love is an idea that I distinguish from the popular idea of self-esteem. Self-esteem is a cargo cult. It says that people who do well, who have done well in life, experience high self-esteem, and therefore if we can convince children in particular, but convince people to evince these proxy markers of high self-esteem, therefore they will have lived good lives, good, happy, healthy, productive lives. And this is false, that you feel the love for yourself that you feel now and the love for yourself that you felt in the past, you felt in consequence of your actions. You've done the right things. You knew they were the right things when you did them. You planned to do the right thing. You followed through, and it was the right thing. The results were exactly what you were expecting. You got the good results you were expecting. And in consequence, you feel greater admiration for yourself. And you do that iteratively. Every time you make a choice, you choose that way. And in the long run, you love yourself. You feel self-love. But the self-love is a consequence of your actions. It is not the cause of your actions. You can't have a cargo cult that says, I will feel self-love, and therefore I will have been healthy, happy, productive. No. You can't change the past, certainly, but a cargo cult is, as far as I'm concerned, it's the ultimate example of the failure of every sort of religion. A cargo cult is ultimately the perfect religion in the sense that it says that if I can fool God into thinking I'm a good person, then I am a good person. No, you're either a good person or you aren't, and you're a good person in your actions. You are what you do. And I think it's appropriate, that self-love is appropriate as the response, that the result, the response, the emotion, the emotional evaluation that you feel about your life in consequence for good behavior over time is self-love, and I think it's completely appropriate. I think this is exactly what you should be doing. That you identify your values, and your values are all of your values through the course of your whole life, not some immediate pecuniary advantage. I can steal a lollipop. Oh, I'm ahead. No, you're behind. You're a thief, and you know it. You just saw yourself committing an ugly, vicious act, taking someone else's property. You get to live your whole life knowing that you're not even just a thief, but a petty, chiseling, really ugly kind of thief. You committed an act of self-destruction. This wasn't an act of self-adoration. This wasn't selfish. This wasn't an expression of adoration for your ego. To the contrary, it was an expression of contempt for not just your ego, but for the whole idea of values and justice and probity and equity and fairness and righteousness. All of these ideas you spit on for nothing. Why? Why? That's silly. But the contrary is so smart that you do what you know is right. In every circumstance, you do what you know is right. You follow through on what you know in your mind is righteous behavior, and in consequence, you feel greater and greater admiration for yourself with every passing day. You feel self-love. You feel self-adoration. You adore your life, your past behavior, in exactly the same way that you claim you want to be able to adore a God. And that's why this is a church. Because I think that the worship of the self by the self is completely appropriate. And the place for worship is a church. Church is a transaction in the way that we talked about transactions last week. A joke isn't a joke if no one laughs. A poem isn't a poem if no one is moved. Music isn't music if no one is dancing. And so if church is a transaction, what is the transactional benefit to the buyer? The seller always wants to tell you about the benefits to him, and we get to that. But the seller doesn't cause the transaction, the buyer does. The buyer is the sine qua non cause of the transaction, because if the buyer doesn't buy, there is no transaction. So what is it that the buyer is getting from church? What is it the buyer is getting from church? Well, if you're a high I, you're getting a chance to show off your new ugly hat. If you're a high S, you're getting the opportunity to reconnect with a whole lot of people that you see once a week, maybe sometimes once a month, maybe only 2 or 3 times a year, but people that you are grateful to have the chance to see and to reconnect with and see how they're getting along. This is what S's do. I don't get it. I mean, I'm a D. I don't get it, but that's what they do. But everybody who comes to church, even the drivers, even the computational folks, even the C's, everybody who comes to church is getting something, and we talked about some of those ideas last week: expiation, exculpation, absolution. That's one thing that people are looking for from church, and I can't do that for you because I can't magically forgive your sins in the absence of any magic. There is no magic, so I can talk to you about how to achieve a certain amount of palliation for your past pain, but I can't make it go away. No one can. It'll never go away. That's a fact. It'll never go away. It can get easier, but it won't go away. That's one thing that people are looking for from church, and I'm not going to be able to give them that. Supplication is another, and we talked about it. If you want to pretend that going rah, 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 rah for a football team is going to make some difference in the score, go ahead and feel that way, but it's not. And that probably is more consequential as a form of supplication than others that you can name. Certainly praying for a stoplight to stay green is not going to have any impact whatever. This will not change anything. If I'm really not much in the supplication business. Another function I can name for churches is one that we definitely can fill. And I named palliation last week, but you can think of others. Celebration. I just did a wedding ceremony in February, and I loved it. I mean, I really loved it. I want to do more. I love weddings. I love the whole idea of baptism, confirmation, that sort of stuff that gets done, at least in Christian churches. And I know there are analogous things in other religions, but that kind of celebration of youth growing into adulthood at various stages, I think is enormously valuable. I think this is immensely valuable, and it's the sort of thing that I'm very definitely interested in. Palliation, both of pain while you're alive, and the pain at the thought of your death, and the pain at the thought of the death of your loved ones. This is another thing that people get from church, and I do think it's enormously valuable, simply because we are social animals. We can't endure these sorts of things alone, and it's one of the things that a church can do for people, is to provide them with a way of carrying their burdens to other people for the span of time that they're just too much to bear. But the value that people come to church for week after week after week, the thing that keeps them coming back, the reason that they keep coming back, is that we need to be reminded of what our virtues and values are. And we come to church in order to get that reminder. The church provides us with, inspiration, but also the intellectual ammunition necessary to pursue our values, to press on regardless, to keep on keeping on, to just keep after it. And I'm not saying you can't do that by yourself, because frankly you do it by yourself. It's the way the job gets done most of the time. But church is a way that you can experience that kind of inspiration, instigation, motivation, cogitation, ratiocination. Right, the Stevie Wonder tune. Church is a way that you can experience that on a regular basis, and to come into contact with ideas that you might not have thought about, or you might not have thought about it in that particular way. Just exactly the same way that I'm taking church apart for you now. No one has ever explored church this way for you, I promise. And certainly you've never had an atheist tell you why you should go to church. But you have that need to worship, and that worship is a value to you. It is of value to you. It leads you to your values. That worship is the poetry that you use to lead your own mind to the values that are most important to you. And church is a way of leading you back to those values again and again and again, of redirecting your attention, refocusing your attention back to the things that matter most to you, life, the values that are most important to you. Church is a way of doing that on a regular basis, and that's why I want a church. I'm very definitely interested in persuading people, but the doctrinal content of what I'm interested in persuading them to is substantially less important to me than persuading you on the meta-topic of pursuing your own values relentlessly, that your only job in this life is to pursue your values, and if you fail at that job, there is no second chance, and there's no one who's going to support you. You have to do this. That's what I want you to do, is I want you to pursue your values. What I want you to do is love your life. I want you to love yourself. I want you to choose admirably and ultimately to choose adorably. I want your choices to be adorable to yourself, and I want for yourself to be adorable to yourself, to be a thing worthy of your worship. Not something that you claim as some kind of phony self-esteem that you are the god of your idolatry, but no, that you know on the basis of factual evidence, your own past awareness, your awareness of your own past behavior, that your life, that yourself is a thing of worship, is an object of worship. It's something that you do and should worship in consequence for the good that you've done with your life. So I think about this. I mean, so far the Church of Splendor is this: me on my sofa with my cat and my guitar, talking straight into your eyes and making you uncomfortable. But soon, ideally next week, but soon I'd like to do this in a bar. And I think it's funny to do church in a bar. I think it's a funny idea. But I want to do a bar on Saturday afternoon, frankly, because when's the best time to remind you of the importance of pursuing your value in order of importance to you, pursue your values in the order of their hierarchy of importance to you, which means yourself, your spouse, your family, your home, your career, your friends. I mean, there is some order to this hierarchy, and when is a really good time to remind you of valuing your values in their order of importance to you? How about Saturday night, just before you could go out and make a terrible mistake and screw everything up? Every guy, every man should be aware that he can screw up his marriage at any instant. A woman has to really trip the breakers to screw up her marriage in one day, but a guy can screw up his marriage at any time. And if you're looking for an ideal time to do that, Friday and Saturday nights would be the time when you're most at risk of making a terribly, permanently consequential mistake. And so it's an ideal time. I want to go to a bar because that's where the sinners are. Not sinners, I don't believe in sin, but that's where I can talk to people who are most invested in staying on the good side of their own values, and I can do it at a time when I can have the most impact, be of the most consequence. And don't get the idea that I intend to lecture you about sin, because I don't. It's you look at the movies that I've made so far and see that I hope I'm easy. I want to be easy on people. I don't want to lecture people individually about their behavior, but I do want to talk about what makes a good life and what makes a good life go wrong. And what better time to do that than Saturday afternoon in a bar? So that's my second-tier church. The first-tier church is here. The second-tier church is in a bar. The third tier is just a continuation of that. I would love to have simulcast video of the church service in the bar. I would love to simulcast it in bars all over the country. And as I travel, I want to make arrangements with bars that we can be on the TV. We'll be 4 to 6 in the afternoon Arizona time. But that same time, whatever time it is in your time zone, we're on TV in the bar. And you can go to the bar and see the Church of Splendor Saturday afternoon wherever you are. So there's the third tier. The fourth tier of this is I really want to do this every day. I like presenting in public, and I want to put a show on the road. I want to talk about marriage in particular. I really want to talk about art, which it's hard to imagine being able to sell a lecture on art in a hotel ballroom kind of show, but that's something that I'd like to do. I'd really like to do kind of an afternoon talk show where we talk to people who are involved in various kinds of self-improvement. And now I'm talking really about practical things like diet, exercise, health, fitness, work, careers, again, marriages, family life, child rearing, everyday life, everyday values for normal people. But talk about it with people who are getting things right or exploring different ideas, who are trying to figure out how to do better. And I would like to do this every day. I mean, I'd like to go do 8 hours a day in a hotel ballroom, maybe 4 different sessions, but do this every day in a different city, in a different hotel, in a different city, and do it 200 days a year, 250 days a year. If this church ever actually generates any money, I mean, all of these are potentially income streams, but the hotel ballroom kind of thing is potentially very lucrative because you're not only selling the tickets, which are profitable, but you also have the opportunity to upsell a whole lot of merchandise or to upsell other opportunities, and there's money in here. I'm not interested in money for the sake of personal riches, but I'm very definitely interested in money for what I can do with it. I'm a driver. I'm a doer. I want things done. And church is always one of the ways that church engages in the palliation business is by the palliation of vice, by giving people cookies for having behaved badly. Oh my God, you got drunk again. Here's a cookie. Here's a free coupon to Burger King. Here's some money. Here's the charity biz. And I really don't have any use for charity. I don't care for it. I mean, direct charity, people that I know, helping people out, absolutely yes. But indiscriminate charity, I don't like it. I don't trust it. I don't have anything to do with it. But I like the idea of collecting lots and lots of donations, huge donations, millions of donations, because rather than using it on charity, I'd like to use it to invest in people with values, and to invest in their values. to help them do better. That when I say evangelize egoism, what I mean is evangelize your own ego. And when I talk about building the middle class, what I mean is building the middle class from inside your home out. You do better. You work harder. You learn more. You make more money. You get better at the things that you do. That you get better at doing the things that you do. You get better at expressing the love that you feel for your values. I want the world to get better one individual at a time, one mind at a time, and I want that one individual to get better from the inside out. The world will get better as each individual person gets better from the inside out, and this is a doctrine I can preach indefinitely. And if I can help you get better in what you're doing, I want to. If people are willing to contribute funds in sufficient quantity, that we can use that money to invest in businesses, small businesses, bigger businesses, startups. I don't really care. What I care about is the results. What I care about is the values. But this is something that we can do with a church. This is something that a church, uniquely among entities, this is something that a church can do. And I want to see it done. I want to do it, do it, do it, do it. Do it. So I want your stuff. I do. I want this. I'm passing the offering plate right now. This is a church. I'm passing the offering plate. I want a bar that I can do this church in. I want people to work with me, musicians to work with me. I definitely want people who can really handle video. I want to do mixed video. I want to do live, mixed, edited video. I want a mixing console. I want multiple cameras, and I want somebody sitting on that mixing console, mixing video, so that we're shooting out a really interesting broadcast. Obviously, I want people to come to my church, but I want your money too. I want your money. Not to make me rich, but to make this church big, to make it bigger. I just want to make it bigger. One step at a time, and I told you how we're going to do it, how it's going to get bigger, but I need your donations, and if you can send $1, $2, $5, $10, that's all welcome, that's great. Anything that you can do is wonderful, but if you are sitting on a big pile of money, a lot of money, and you want to really do something consequential to change the world, I'm the best value on the planet. I'm the best deal you got going. I'm your best bet yet. And if somebody can throw a lot of money at this, we can make it happen fast. I mean, we can make it happen in the long run anyway. And if we change one mind at a time, it doesn't take very long until there are a lot of minds out there that change. And a whole lot of people evangelizing egoism to their friends, to their loved ones, to their family, to their children. And so we will conquer the world in due course. We will take over the world. Egoism will be the philosophy that drives the majority of living human beings in due course. But how long that takes is really a financial question. And if you want it to happen now, if you want it to happen quickly, selfadoration.com. The link is I don't go to your church. Just click through to there and you'll find out how you make the donation. Give your money, friends. If you don't trust it, if you don't believe it, then you're not going to do it. And the fact is, you won't do it until you do it. I'm easy. I don't care. I already live the life I'm talking about. I already live my splendor from the inside out, and you can see it. You can see it in my face. It's what's kept you sitting here with me all this time, is that you want it too. I can show you how to get it. But that requires time, effort, and funding. I got the ideas, I got the time, I'm willing to make as much effort as I can make, but that's not going to be nearly enough. Obviously, I don't have any money. So, if you want to be a part of this, be a part of it. And if you just want to sit by and watch the world spin into chaos, have fun with it. That'll be great. The nature of a transaction from the buyer's point of view is what's in it for me. There's nothing wrong with that. This is one of those things that people always try to talk you out of. That, John Lennon singing "I Me Mine," that there are always people trying to talk you out of pursuing your own values. There are always. I mean, if you listen, just open your ears and listen for that particular message. Oh, you don't want what you're just being selfish. You're always looking out for yourself. Why don't you ever put anybody else first? What about the other guy? This is the kind of crap that people say when they're trying to get you to forswear your own values, to betray your own values for the sake of theirs. What's in it for you? How are you going to be better in consequence? How is your own life going to be better? How are you going to love yourself more in consequence? I got the magic beans. I'm selling self-adoration. That's it. I'm selling self-adoration. And I'm grateful to you for giving me your attention. I'll be more grateful to you when you give me your commitment, when you commit yourself in your actions, when you commit yourself to living a life of splendor. And when that happens, the whole world will change. Because why? The universe starts here and emanates outward. Change what's in here, you change everything. That's my promise. That's my prayer. And that's my homily for this week. Bless you. Thank you so much for being a part of the Church of Splendor. Come back next week, and in the meantime, do something. Live.